And I also read that some building historians came to visit the North Wales Hospital, and they said that the architecture was the best they'd seen in Wales.
Again, I can only hark back to my first impression of the building.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's comparable with any
Yeah.
classic building in the country. It really, really was then. And it still is today. It's still impressive today because it still attracts attention today.
Yeah. Yeah.
People look at it and think, whoa, Gothic, and it looks, whoa, it looks haunted, it looks spooky, it looks scary. Well, it does now because it's derelict. But in those days, it was a living, breathing building. And, you know, wonderfully constructed. The architecture, as you said, surrounding the buildings. And not just the main buildings, but all the buildings around. They were state of the art for the time.
19th and 20th century.
Well, absolutely, yes.
The North Wales Hospital in Denbigh was built between 1846 and 1848, and the plans were drawn up by Thomas Full James. A North Wales Hospital Society was formed in 1992, and they are the custodians of significant documentary and oral historical material. The hospital was made due to poor publicity about the appalling treatment Welsh people suffering from serious mental illnesses who were forced to seek treatment in English asylums. Joseph Ablett, a local landowner, donated the original 20 acres of land for the hospital complex in about 1842. The buildings are now surrounded by 126 acres of wooded and landscaped grounds. Plans for it were laid in 1842 and building actually commenced in September 1844. It was the first mental hospital to be built in Wales. The original U-shaped complex is in a restrained Tudor-Beaton style, built of locally sourced limestone ashlar with local sandstone dressings and slate roofs. It is listed Grade 2 because it is an exceptionally fine and pioneering example of early Victorian asylum architecture. It is recognised by specialist building historians as the best of its kind in Wales, and particularly notable for the relatively benign regime its original plan and management represents. The imposing gate piers announce a formal avenue, originally designed to have gardens either side, with it the main approach to the principal entrance which faces northeast. A series of walled garden enclosures were constructed within the shelter of the U-shape, where gender-segregated inmates were required to take daily exercise. An extension to the hospital in 1867 closed the open rear of the U-shaped main building and provided 2 twin-bayed wards to either side. Further extensions and new building works were carried out between 1903 and 1908. 2 large private dwellings near the hospital were purchased and extended in 1926, and 2 villas and a nurse's home were built in 1934. Additional ward accommodation was built in 1956 when the hospital reached its peak capacity of 1,500 patients, and there were further additions, links and extensions constructed until the closure announcement in 1987. The chapel is listed for its special interest as a fine example of the 1860s asylum chapel. The bungalow is apparently of special interest as an ingeniously planned late 19th century isolation block. The lodge and gate piers are included as good examples of their type and as an integral part of the site. The nurse's home is considered a good example of Neo-Georgian hospital architecture, which retains original detail and was virtually intact at the time of listing.
Initially, what the building was about was caring for the insane of North Wales.
Yeah. And I also read, and you may also know, a chap called Joseph Ablett donated the 20 acres of which the hospital stood on to build the complex for Welsh people, because they were having to, a lot of the Welsh people were being ridiculed when they went into England, into English asylums, because they were Welsh people and some of them couldn't speak English. So this chap had donated the land for the hospital to be built for Welsh people to be treated in Wales.
Well, that's such an important point that you make, because you're right. If you look back in time, anybody living in Wales, especially on the west of Wales, Anglesey, Carnarvon, that sort of way, their first, possibly, probably only language was Welsh.
Yeah.
Unlike today, when people, a lot of people have both languages.
Yeah, bilingual, yeah.
Bilingual, and of course there's less Welsh speakers today.
Yeah.
So in those days, go back 150 years, vitally important that they had somewhere where they could go, where their carers or their wardens or their doctors were able to speak to them in a language that they understood.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And then as the hospital grew from the 20 acres, it now stands, even though it's closed, the current owners own 126 acres now.
Well, as a building, as an entity, as a community in its own right on the edge of Denbigh, it grew. New treatments came along. I've told you already, I worked in the sports department.
Yeah.
Well, that means sport.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean table tennis in a room. It means going out and playing football, rugby, cricket.
Yeah.
Yes, for the staff, but also for the patients. Particularly cricket. I'm not quite sure about rugby, but certainly football. Patients would play football. We had tennis courts. We've got bowls. The whole site expanded, and when you look at the flower beds at the front of the hospital in the 70s and in the 80s, and they were absolutely beautiful.
Immaculate,
you can imagine also the state of the bowling green, one of the best in North Wales, rugby pitch, cricket pitch, tennis courts, all in fantastic condition and able to be played across North Wales in the local arenas.
It holds high esteem with the Denbigh people and the people who work there, and even today, people who have passed away who work there, their families carry on this sort of regard of holding on to it, protecting it, and wanting the best to happen to the building, even now as it lies there decayed. People travel from all over the country to see it. That makes it a special place, worth visiting. It must be, as you say, you've worked there, we've been there, and we live right by it. And the architecture to this day, even though the inside is demolished and it's dangerous and it shouldn't be entered, by the way, by anybody, but it just shows you it's still a beautiful building.
Well, it looks the heart, doesn't it?
It's just, it does. Every time I pass it, I know it's there, but every time you drive past it or you see it, you feel quite proud. And I've got no connection with the hospital, but I'm still proud it's there. And I'd like it left there.
Yes. Let's leave it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and I'd like to thank Peter for his time in coming here today and answering a few questions and provoking a few memories of the North Wales Hospital. So thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you soon.